Hello everybody, I'm Teacher Carrie. Today we're going to talk about VIPKID Unit Assessments. So a lot of people when they get booked for their first unit assessment, they get nervous because they think this is a test, I'm not sure what to do. The biggest thing that makes people nervous is you see that there's about 46 slides in most unit assessments, somewhere around there. So when you're first getting started, you're going to freak out a little and think, how am I going to pace myself for 46 slides? But the good thing is it really works just like a normal lesson. There are just extra slides, but there's really no more content. To be honest, you'll probably find yourself moving more quickly through unit assessments. You may have to try to slow yourself down in order to not finish super early at the end of the unit assessment. First, let's talk about why they have the unit assessments, what they're for, and when you can expect to see them. They are what you would think. They're basically to judge the students' learning progress in that unit so far. So it comes up in different places depending on whether you're in level 1 or if you're in levels 2 and above. So in level 1, you have unit assessments. You have a checkpoint assessment in lesson 4, and then you have the end of unit assessment, lesson 8 of each unit. For levels 2 and above, you have a mid-unit assessment in lesson 6, which is your half point lesson, and then an end of unit assessment in lesson 12. Now the other distinction that you'll see is in the level 2, what you'll see in your midpoint assessment, so lesson 6, what you'll see there is the first half of the lesson will actually be review. So on all of these review slides, you're not teaching any new material. The student should already be familiar with this, and it's really just a review to prepare them for that mid-unit assessment that they're about to take. So when you begin your unit assessment, what I recommend is going ahead and pulling up the unit assessment report on the side of your screen. If you click the Add Feedback button that you typically use at the end of class, but when you click that at the beginning of class, it will actually bring the rubric up on the side of your screen. So you can have that with you. That also includes answers to questions, which is super helpful, especially later in the higher levels. You might need those answers. So that's very helpful for reference. And that way you can actually score the student as you go. So you don't have to take notes, you don't have to try to remember things. You can just score them based on each question as you proceed through the assessment. So in all of the other levels, levels 3 and above, you will have the entire lesson will be an assessment on that lesson 6 mid-unit assessment. So now for the reason for all of the slides in the unit assessment. The reason for this is because there's a lot of filler slides, which the assessments are set up to look like a game board. And so when you start going through, you'll see there's sort of a game board picture that shows each level, and you have some type of a story usually that goes along with your unit assessment, and so you have these pictures of the game board. And so each time you finish a level, there's a picture of, yay, you finished this level, and then you've got a picture of the game board, and then you've got a slide that says, let's begin the next level. So you have a lot of slides that all you're doing is literally just click and say, begin, click to the next one. So you're not spending any time on those. You're not having to teach any extra material. All it is you're having to click through a few extra slides. So it does make pacing more difficult at the beginning if you're really focused on, typically you're trying to stick to that 1 minute per slide rule. It's not going to apply so much here. However, it's, about twice as many slides. So you can kind of try to be spending about 30 seconds on each slide. But I would just try to keep an eye on, you can see in your rubric, how many levels you have, and within that you can see how many questions are on each one. So just kind of keep an eye on where you're at in there and try to judge it based on the portion of time that you've already taken up. And so that way you can know if you need to slow down or speed up. But once you've taught a couple of them, it'll feel much more natural, and you won't need to worry so much. Now, the other difference that you're going to have is going to be in the homework projects. Now, there are no homework projects for level 1, so you don't have to worry about that. In the level 2 interactive lessons, they have one homework assignment that everybody does. And when you're doing the assessment, you'll pull that right up there. So you don't have to know beforehand what their homework was. When you get to that slide, it will have the assignment right there. It will say something like, draw a picture of your VIPKID teacher and be able to talk about them. So it'll tell you exactly what the student should have done, and it will tell you what they should be able to present in their assessment. Now, the difference in levels 3 and above is that they are given 3 options to choose from for their project. And so you will have a project option menu before you when you get to that slide. So you'll need to ask the student which project option or which homework option they chose to complete. But you'll still have the instructions for each one there so you can see what it is that they need to be presenting so that you can help prompt them a little bit. There are often times when students do not complete their homework as assigned. So you have to use your best judgment of how to handle this. What I personally recommend is if you have a student who is very prepared for their assessment, they fly through the material and you do have extra time at the end, I would let them go ahead and complete that homework assignment with you in class after they've completed the rest of it. I would not do it before because you want to make sure that you get through all of the assessment. You don't want to spend time at the beginning doing that homework project. But if you find yourself having extra time at the end, you can go ahead and let them do it with you, describe it to you, go ahead and do that. And I personally give partial credit for that. I don't like to give full credit for the creation of the project. You grade them based on their presentation of the material as well as the actual project itself. Did they take care in doing it? So if we do it together in class, I typically give them half credit for the actual creation of the project because they didn't do it beforehand. So I don't give full credit for that. But if they do a great job explaining it in class, even if we did it together, if they then articulately explain it, I would give them full credit for that presentation. So you have to just use your best judgment on that, how you think the student did on that project, but just know that there is a little bit of variation that you'll see from different teachers on how they handle those situations. But what we do want to be doing is reminding our students before the assessments that they have these homework projects due. You want to make sure that they know that they need to have it for lesson 12. So just so you know, they are reminded of their homework projects on lesson 5, lesson 6, and lesson 11. So those are when you're going to see those homework assignments given to the students in our lessons. So just keep that in mind. It's a great time to remind the student and the parents in your class feedback. I try to remind them on lesson 5, lesson 6, and lesson 11 every time it comes up in the slides, because that will be at the end of your slides on those lessons will be the homework project. And so it's a great time to remind them, and I remind them in feedback as well and tell them the student needs to have their project completed and ready to present in their assessment in lesson 12. So make sure that you're reminding them beforehand. But back to the project itself, when you get to that point in the assessment, all you need to do is ask the student, do you have your homework? And hopefully they say yes, and here it is, and they show it to you. A lot of times you have to kind of get them to speak about it. They want to just show you and they don't really want to speak. So try to encourage them. A big part of this is encouraging them to speak about something that they've done, and they want to use their own words, use those sentences that they've learned. So it's a really good time for them to practice. But you will need to help them a little bit to know, especially the younger ones, how to present. So what you'll want to do is pay close attention to that rubric, because especially for level 2, but all the levels as well, it will give you specific guidelines for each question that may be different from other questions. So you may be able to give full points for a particular question if they complete it with teacher assistance. So basically, if they repeat you, they get full points for that. However, sometimes it says they get full points if they answer independently. So you have to look and make sure that you're checking how they're supposed to answer, because it will vary based on their level and based on the question. So make sure you're paying attention to each question, what the rubric says as far as whether they get 0 points, 1 point, or 2 points. 2 points is the most, and it goes down from there. So typically, most of your students will either be getting 1 or 2 points on each question. It's very rare for a student to get 0 points, although it happens sometimes if they're just refusing to participate. That's going to be pretty much the only time that you would give 0 points for a question, is if they will not speak or respond or do anything with you, if they're not on the camera, pretty much. So usually you're going to have at least 1 point for each question, if not full credit. Most of my students get almost full credit on most assessments, but not all. You do want to take it seriously, respond appropriately to how they're doing, but try to be generous and encouraging in your grading. So after the homework section, then they will go through different levels with all the different topics. So you'll have a level kind of based on vocabulary or phonics, math, reading, different things, but it just takes you straight through there. And again, you've got that rubric that you're following. So each slide is its own question. And so you just want to make sure that each slide you're going ahead and checking whether the student, did it independently or did it with your assistance or minimal assistance or whatever it may be. Just go ahead and score it throughout. And that way, once you get to the last question, you've already filled out your entire rubric and it's ready to go. Now there is a section at the bottom of the rubric for comments, and so that is just your typical class feedback that you would normally send to the parents, but in this case it goes to the parents and the learning partner, and so you still want to fill out those comments just like you would for a regular class, but do know that that does go to the parents. It doesn't just go to VIPKID, it goes to the parents as well. Now, one thing to keep in mind with unit assessment reports, they are almost impossible to edit once you have submitted. So just really make sure that you got everything. You didn't miss any answers to questions. You didn't forget to put the comments in. You didn't accidentally put the wrong kid's name. Just double check everything before you submit it, because once you submit it, it's pretty much locked in. You have to send tickets to try to change it, and even then, I'm not sure if it can happen. So just be very careful in submitting those. Typically with class feedback, you've got a good window of time that you can go back and edit, but just keep in mind it's not the case with these. Once you hit submit, there's no editing option. When you get to the end of a unit assessment, there's kind of like a you win slide, and I like to have something special for the kid for that to make it a little more exciting. I'm very minimal in my props, so I just use the same thing every time. I just have a trophy that I give them. Typically there's a picture of a trophy on the screen, so it's appropriate for that. But anything you want to do, if you want to like throw some confetti or have like a little party blower or something, just something to make it a little bit more exciting once you get to the end for the little kids. Although honestly, my big kids like my trophy a lot too. It makes them smile. So that's pretty much all you need to know for unit assessments. I recommend just doing the same thing that you normally do as far as props go, secondary rewards. Just stick with what you always do in class. So for me, the only thing that I use for my classes is my glitter stars, and I give them at the same time as the stars in the platform. So do make sure that you're remembering to give those stars in the classroom during your unit assessment. And I just give them, most unit assessments have 5 levels, although some have 6. And level 1 has 4 levels. But most of the time I give a star at the end of each level on the assessment. And then sometimes if there's 6 levels, on the last one, they just get the trophy instead of a star on the 6th level. So just do your rewards as normal, whatever you normally do, whatever props you usually use. I don't use a lot of props, and especially for unit assessments, I don't use many because you're not teaching. But it is nice to have some things because sometimes the kid might not be super prepared. They might not remember something. And so don't think that you can't teach on a unit assessment. You can still teach when you encounter a situation where the student isn't super sure of something or they need a little review. Go ahead and take that time to review, pull out your whiteboard, do whatever you normally do in your classes to teach that material. So don't feel like you can't reteach things or explain things. We want the students to be achieving these objectives in the classroom. They're not passing or failing. It's just trying to gauge where they're at, but the goal is we want them learning. And so go ahead and teach wherever you see necessary as you're moving through. So that's pretty much all you need to know for a unit assessment. The only feedback you need to fill out is that unit assessment report with the comments at the bottom. You don't need to fill out any other feedback. There's nothing else out of the ordinary about it. So there's no reason to stress. It's just pretty much like any other class, and you'll actually find as you have taught a couple that they're really probably the easiest classes to teach because you're not teaching any new material. You're kind of just going over what the kids already learned. So it's a great time for conversation. It's a good time to help the student engage more with the material because they should already know all of it. Again, it's a good idea to be prepared if you need to extend at the end. So just kind of have some conversation ideas in mind based on your topic, or have something in mind for how you might be able to extend well if you find yourself with extra time. There's several students who, are able to finish a unit assessment in 12 minutes if you'd let them. And so just make sure that you're slowing the students down if need be, or encouraging them to keep moving if they're really struggling. So you really just will have to gauge it based on your student. But in most cases, you're going to be able to work through it in the 25 minutes just like normal. So don't let the number of slides scare you. I hope that this will help you as you prepare to teach your first unit assessment. If you have any more questions, please feel free to email me. I'll include my email address below, and I'd be happy to help you. Thanks for watching.